Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you are already enjoying 2022. 2021 has been such a good year for the film industry, a huge step up from a stale 2020. I was initially going to do a top 10 favorites of the year, but there are so many great entries worth talking about, so I need to do a top 15. Now, here are some ground rules to what films are qualified to be considered for the list. If it received an MPAA rating of G, PG, PG-13, or R, then I consider it a film to allow theatrically released and streaming films to be on the list. If a film was released in January or February of 2021, it gets disqualified from my list because those films were considered a 2020 film by the Oscars. Therefore, if the film first premiered between March through December 2021 in any form, it is qualified for my list. I also have to see the film for it to, of course, qualify for my list. There are many 2021 films I wish to see, but these are the ones I saw and loved. And most importantly, it's just my opinion. My exact ranking is not about which film I believed is objectively better than another. These are just films I enjoyed the most and I believe worth sharing. Before we get started on the list, here are some honorable mentions. The Green Knight, David Lowery's gorgeous fantasy epic, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, a great introduction to a new character for the MCU. The French Dispatch, Wes Anderson cranking his style up to 11. Ghostbusters Afterlife, a sequel that takes the classic franchise in a new direction while still honoring the original. And No Time to Die, a flawed but fitting end to Daniel Craig's run as James Bond. Number 15, Belfast, a well-made drama set during a religious conflict in Northern Ireland. It's great that we are seeing this event through the lens of a 9-year-old child to make it feel more like a coming of age film. You really understand what life is like for our protagonist and how events around him affect his life. Kenneth Branagh gives the audience a very personal story to him. Number 14, King Richard, a feel-good sports drama about Venus and Serena Williams. You see the struggles Richard Williams goes through to help his daughters become the icons we know today. Will Smith delivers one of the best performances of his career. Despite that, the entire supporting cast delivers solid performances where everyone stands out. Most of the actors weren't even well known until this film came out. King Richard is a heartwarming success story that anyone can enjoy, especially fans of Venus and Serena. Number 13, Don't Look Up. Adam McKay's satire of today's world. This controversial story revolves around two astronomers trying to warn the world that an asteroid is about to destroy humanity. It's a bit on the nose with the climate change allegory, but it's great how Adam McKay is able to create his own politics in this film. Not only that, but we spend a lot of time to understand that people on both sides of that political spectrum are flawed characters. I do not believe Adam McKay is making a political statement. He is just expressing his frustration with today's society. To top it all off, this film has an all-star cast with Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Kate Blanchett, Meryl Streep, Jonah Hill, Mark Rylance, Timothy Chalamet, and so much more. Number 12, The Power of the Dog. Jane Campion's latest entry is far from your standard Western. The film follows along a rancher named Phil, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, who meets his brother's stepson named Peter. What made me like this film is that there are many different ways to interpret the story. Is Phil the devil punishing Peter for having a more feminine personality? Are Phil and Peter in a homosexual relationship together? The acting and directing does an excellent job at selling that ambiguity. The Power of the Dog is a story that has quite a lot to say about masculinity and trying to get us to figure out what really happened. Number 11, Spencer. This film is all about Princess Diana spending Christmas with the royal family and how awful it was. What struck me was that it's far from your everyday biopic. It's not about Diana's life from beginning till end. it's about deconstructing an icon. This story reminds you every 5 minutes of what Diana wants for her happiness versus what the royal family wants to protect their image. There are quite a few scenes that are just in Diana's head, which keeps you guessing how much of it really happened. To top it all off, Kristen Stewart gives the best performance of her career and proves that she has come a long way from that girl from Twilight. Spencer is all about a celebrity just wanting to live like a normal person, just trying to be more down to earth. Number 10 is Tick Tick Boom, Lin-Manuel Miranda's directorial debut starring Andrew Garfield. I am usually not a musical person, but I really got into this story about real life Broadway composer Jonathan Larson. I thoroughly enjoyed this story about a struggling artist, not being certain if he can succeed in his passion when everyone else is expressing their doubts. I really like how the musical numbers are either in Jonathan's head or what he is actually performing in front of an audience. To top it all off, Andrew Garfield delivers one of my favorite performances of the year by bringing the energy of this film. I cannot believe how this British actor can speak in an American accent, sing, sing in an American accent, and capture the mannerisms and facial expressions of the character. Number 9, The Last Duel, Ridley Scott's sword epic that sadly went off everyone's radar. This is a story about a squire and a knight who battle to the death in a trial by combat because one is accused of raping the other's wife. What's great is that this story is told in different perspectives of it through three central characters. It's interesting to compare the different perspectives, especially how each character is depicted differently. This true story is set in medieval France, but it is still relevant today. In today's world, there have been sexual assault allegations against many celebrities, but there is ambiguity on who is telling the truth. Ben Affleck and Matt Damon wrote the script of this film to shed light on that issue. The Last Duel is a timeless story with a timeless issue. Number 8, The Mitchells vs. the Machines. Phil Lord and Chris Miller just can't stop producing animated films I love. This story combines family drama and robot apocalypse perfectly. This film spends a lot of time on the family dynamic and really makes you connect with these characters. This story also has a lot to say about technology and how it affects the human behavior. Lord and Miller use a similar approach to the animation as they did with Into the Spider-Verse, where they combine 3D and 2D animation incredibly well. Mitchell's vs. the Machines is a visually stunning film that has a lot of heart to it. Number 7 is The Suicide Squad. This rebootquel, directed by James Gunn, is precisely what I wished the 2016 film to be. James Gunn has always been an expert at introducing an ensemble of characters, since this is the man who made Guardians of the Galaxy. He took the same approach with the characters from the Suicide Squad and helped each of them shine in this 2-hour adventure. Of course, Gunn would give the audience some stunning visuals and a killer soundtrack. Despite a lot of explosive action and gory violence, there is a surprising amount of depth to these characters. Number 6 is the Snyder Cut of Justice League. If you follow on the fiascos surrounding the making of the theatrical cut, then this is the most cathartic film of the year. If you don't know, here's a quick rundown. Zack Snyder, the original director, stepped down from directing Justice League because his daughter committed suicide. Warner Bros. And DC had the bright idea of bringing in Joss Whedon to pretty much make a completely different film. The theatrical cut became a rushed mess with cheap jokes. The actors spoke out a year ago regarding the awful way they were treated during the reshoots directed by Joss Whedon. It's a miracle Zack Snyder is given the money to complete his vision of the story. This 4-hour cut takes advantage of the runtime by making sure we understand each character. This is a story about belonging, and it just so happens to be made by a man who donated his Justice League earnings to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. This long story effectively develops these characters, bring them together for a team up, and give us great payoffs in the last hour. Number 5 is Coda. This film on Apple TV Plus truly made me respect the platform for supporting lesser known artists. If it went off your radar, here's a rundown of what it's about. The story follows along a child of deaf adults, Ruby, the only hearing person in her family. Because of that, Ruby is a main factor in the family's success in the fishing business. However, when Ruby discovers her talent for singing, she desires to go to college and leave her family behind. This creates a conflict for her, whether she should support her needs or the family's. This is a heartfelt coming of age drama that sheds light on a disability with little representation in media. What struck me the most is that the lead actress has to not only act but also be fluent in sign language, act well in sign, and sing. I do not understand how Emilia Jones does it, but I hope to see her in more projects. Number four is Spider Man No Way Home. This billion-dollar film is a pleasure to watch for fans of the whole Spider Man franchise. This is the most ambitious solo outing of the MCU. What makes me love this film is that the story understands what makes me love the character of Spider Man. He makes mistakes and faces the consequences, but most of all, he puts everyone else first before himself. The entire cast really adds to Spidey's arc in this film. The cherry on top is, of course, the familiar faces, most of which are given heartfelt payoffs to their character arcs from past Spider Man franchises. I saw this film twice, and both times the theater went wild every 5 minutes. Spider Man No Way Home is a roller coaster of emotions for any fan of the character. Number three is Come On, Come On, my favorite indie darling of the year. Joaquin Phoenix stars as a radio host named Johnny who has to take care of his nephew because his parents have their own issues to deal with. This film features many montages of youngsters Johnny interviews across various cities regarding their views on life. It's certainly great to see how different people respond to similar questions, being asked almost like a documentary. We also spend a lot of time with Johnny and his nephew developing their bond during this sort of road trip story. This film certainly sheds light on the difficulty for adults to work their problems around raising a child. Woody Norman as the nephew amazed me by how great he was in the film, despite being so young and playing opposite of an Oscar winner. Come On is a well paced, well written, well acted, well shot, and all around heartwarming drama. Number two is Licorice Pizza. Paul Thomas Anderson's charming coming of age film set in the 70s that is clearly personal to him. This is a great story about two people who do not really know what to do with their lives, despite both being in different stages of their lives. This film lacks a plot because even the characters do not know what the plot is. These characters are just along for the ride just like us. This film does, however, have some controversy over this one character who is a white restaurant owner speaking to his Japanese wife in a very offensive accent. I interpret it as an ongoing theme happening in the whole film, using a relationship for their personal gain. The two leads are constantly using relationships to basically fuel their ego. The white man uses this Asian woman as a prop to sell a product. The fact that he replaces that Asian woman for another Asian wife later in the film emphasizes that. If that particular character was Asian and speaking in that offensive manner, then I would have found that very offensive and just outright disgusting. This film may have cameos from famous actors such as Bradley Cooper and Sean Penn, but the real stars are the fresh new faces, Alana Haim and Cooper Hoffman. Those two deliver exceptional performances despite this film being their acting debut. What impressed me even more is that they were able to handle filming numerous continuous shots despite their lack of acting experience. Licorice Pizza is without a doubt one of the most rewatchable films of the year and has one of my favorite 2021 scripts thanks to its witty dialogue. And number one is Dune. This film is a cinematic masterpiece. Director Denis Villeneuve adapts one of my favorite books and captures what makes that classic story great. Despite being a part one, Denis challenges the audience to think about how he interprets the novel in order to discover the layers of the story, rather than what's happening on the surface. This film has a massive ensemble cast that includes Timothy Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Josh Brolin, Zendaya, Jason Momoa, Javier Bardem, and so many more stars. Every department brings their A game to Dune, whether it's the gorgeous cinematography, stunning visuals, immersive sound design, or the breathtaking score. Dune is a cinematic treat for me, which is why it is the film that stuck with me the most from 2021. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below your list of 2021 favorites. I hope you all have a joyous 2022.